Hello and welcome to this Week 1 edition of the Show from the Shoe, formerly known as a Lantern Football Podcast. We'll be going by a different name, though, this year. Sitting next to me is my partner, as always, Colin Hossel. Colin, how are you doing on this Wednesday afternoon?
It's good to be here. I'm excited for the game, finally. It's been a long time coming.
It has been. I'm really psyched to get some football going. And we are joined by the editor-in-chief at the Collegiate Times. He works for Virginia Tech student newspaper, knows a lot about Virginia Tech football, wrote some great articles. Ricky LeBlue. Ricky, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. You know, we're just excited for the game as you guys.
Yeah, I wanted to have a student on, and particularly you, because I know you've been there for a few years now, and I want to know what the atmosphere is ahead of this game, because after last year, I can only imagine what it is after the upset last year. Now, Ohio State obviously won the national championship. It must be crazy.
Yeah, people are already making plans after the game if we win. It's definitely a very excited, tense atmosphere. There's a lot of optimism, actually, amongst the fans when it comes to the actual result of the game. And obviously, I don't know if you guys know, but Brad Paisley is going to be playing a concert the night before here in Blacksburg.
Did not.
On campus, yeah. So it's definitely kind of getting, that larger scale. And I think that definitely stems from last year's upset.
Exactly, and Frank Beamer did go on record and talking a little bit about how there's not normally games like this. Games like this don't come around a lot. Is there a sense of confidence almost because obviously Virginia Tech did upset Ohio State a year ago, and now Ohio State's missing a few guys. Virginia Tech gets this game at home. Like you said, Brad Paisley concert, there's going to be a lot of energy. Are they confident that they can get this done?
I think they are, but I also think that they are being have that realist mindset. Just because you beat a team 1 year ago doesn't mean you're going to beat them again. I think that J.T. Barrett's made a lot of improvements, and obviously Ohio State is an elite team through and through, basically every position group. That being said, though, I think that there's a general sense of confidence, not just in the coaching staff, but in the players as well. I think that they're ready to prove that last year wasn't just a fluke, some freak, incident. And I think that you're going to see a lot of emotion, not just from Tech, but Ohio State as well on the field Monday night.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I think that especially since Ohio State has the suspensions. I mean, after last year, we know that Ohio State's not going to overlook Virginia Tech again, obviously. But what is Virginia Tech going to bring to the table on offense? Because we know they have a great defense and they're returning a lot on defense, but they are returning a couple playmakers on offense, including the quarterback, running back, and top wideouts, and a tight end. Like, how is the offense going to look? Because Michael Brewer had to make a lot of good plays on his feet last year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the offense they're going to try and pound the ball a little bit more than we saw last season. I think that now with a healthy stable of running backs, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the situation last year, but both Shy McKenzie and Marshawn Williams were lost middle of the year to ACL injuries. Trey Edmonds broke his collarbone, so he missed the last third of the season. And it really, put J.C. Coleman, who has been here for a while, in a position to succeed, and he's really taken that mantle. He'll be coming in as the starting running back. He'll be getting probably most of the carries, I would assume. But definitely Michael Brewer, I think his second year in the offense, you got to remember when he came in last year, it was his first. He never even had an off season in that offense. He was just learning it. Players and coaches have said that his understanding of the offense when Tech played Ohio State was very rudimentary, very, very limited. And I think that's completely different now that he's had a full season and an entire offseason under his belt to get used to it. And you mentioned the playmakers on the outside and the tight end. Isaiah Ford is really good on third downs, finding open space. He's got really good hands. Cam Phillips is another guy who we've seen make big plays on third down. But I think that the biggest threat on offense that Buckeye fans need to worry about is Bucky Hodges. The guy is an All-American tight end, or a preseason All-American. He's a mismatch nightmare for literally any defensive player on the field. He's 6'5", 240, 250 with very good speed, very good athletic ability, can jump, get the high ball. He's got solid hands. He's really someone that you can put in several different positions on the field, and he can make a lot of plays down the field for you.
Yeah, and Ohio State knows him from last year, 28-21. He put him up in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I don't like to brag, but he was my key player to watch a year ago, and he did end up having a big game. But sticking on the offensive side of the ball with Virginia Tech, Scott Loeffler is an extremely, extremely interesting part of this game because he has had success in some places, he's struggled in other places. He's been a guy that's been up and down, and it's been mostly down at Virginia Tech. Is it the sense that it's now or never for him at Virginia Tech? He's got more experience now. He has guys that he's coached for a while. Do you get the feeling that he has to produce now or he might be out?
I do. I think that this is really kind of a crossroads for Scott. We've seen the offense really kind of been stagnant, inconsistent with him. Some games it looks really fluid. The others they can't, get any first downs. That being said, I think that his ability to recruit is going to keep him around longer than people would think. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but he brought in Dwayne Lawson this offseason as a true freshman. He's a 4- or 5-star quarterback recruit. Has a great arm, very mobile, 6'6" kind of guy, a guy who can beat you with his legs and his arm. And I think that his ability to recruit quarterbacks and work with quarterbacks has kept him around this long. But like you said, there really isn't, that there are no excuses built in. The offensive line still isn't great, but it's better than it was last year. He's got 4 playmakers in the backfield. Michael Brewer, another year in his offense, redshirt senior quarterback, experienced, tough, battle-tested. And the receivers on the outside, he's got 2 playmakers on the outside of Bucky Hodges. So if Scott really can't get the offense going this year, we see that kind of same stagnation, you could see another change at offensive coordinator for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and like you were touching on the Virginia Tech offensive line having a few question marks, and I think without Joey Bosa on the defensive line, Ohio State will definitely have that. But on the other side of the equation, Ohio State's offensive line might be the best in the country 1 year after they had the debacle against Virginia Tech, where I'm fairly certain they gave up 7 sacks that game. They couldn't run block at all. I mean, but on the other side, Virginia Tech has a ton of defensive playmakers, and I'm pretty sure they all return. Luther Maddie, Daddy Nicholas, Ken Eckman. Never going to say his name right. How do you see that matchup working out? Do you think it's going to play out similarly to last year, or do you think Virginia Tech's going to need to rely on its defensive backfield to cover the wide receivers more than the pass rush?
Well, I do think that Bud Foster's defense, really lives and dies by the man coverage that his defensive secondary gives him. Bud likes to play a lot of zero coverage against guys that really aren't known for being pocket passers. And we saw this again against Ohio State with JT Barrett. We often saw either no safety or one safety really deep in the secondary, and everyone else was on man coverage. They were on an island, and JT Barrett really struggled to make a lot of throws. And I think that that's something that Tech's going to have to rely on again. They're going to have good coverage from Kendall Fuller, who is arguably the best corner in the nation. Brandon Faison, who's returning from injury. Before he got hurt, he was kind of a guy who was on the up and up, becoming an elite corner. Chuck Clark is another guy who's very good. He's versatile. He can play free safety. He can play corner. Donovan Riley, who had that kind of game-clinching interception last year. They're very deep and talented at the corner position, and I think that will bode well for them. But that being said, Ohio State's still very talented, a lot of playmakers, and I think that if JT Barrett or Cardale Jones, whoever gets the start, if they can make throws over the top, Ohio State's really going to have an easy way with Tech in this game.
Yeah, and you talk about the differences in talent or the similarities in talent between Virginia Tech's defense and Ohio State's offense. I think a lot of people are pointing to that to being one of the key matchups throughout this game. Touching on a little bit of Bud Foster's scheme, he's been such a stalwart for Virginia Tech in Frank Beamer's tenure. Obviously, even the past 4 years, which have been kind of a couple of tough years for Virginia Tech. He's been solid. The defense has been solid. Let me ask you this, and no disrespect to Virginia Tech, why is he still there? Why is he not taking a head coaching job elsewhere? Is it a sense where he's the head coaching waiting, or does he just love being there so much? Because every year you hear his name as a possible candidate for head coaching jobs, but he's still there coaching that defense.
Yeah, I think it's a general sense of loyalty. Bud is very loyal to Frank. He's very loyal to the university, and he's loyal to the town. I mean, he's been here forever. He's had a lot of success. He's very, very well liked amongst the fan base. If you had to ask most of the fan base who should take over once Frank decides to step down, I think most of them would say Bud Foster. I don't know if he's the coach in waiting. That's never really been addressed officially by either Frank or the athletic department. But I do think that Bud is probably the premier candidate. He's at the top of the list to get that job. And I think that Bud is trying to wait things out. I mean, he's not an old guy. He's in his 50s. You know, he's got plenty of coaching left in him. So I think that he's really just trying to give Frank a good, solid, elite defense for his last 2 years.
Yeah, so talking about Bud Foster, one of the things that I'm certain, been focusing on is Ezekiel Elliott. And at this point last year, early in the season, we weren't sure if Ezekiel Elliott or Curtis Samuel would be the starting running back for Ohio State. And now we obviously have seen what Ezekiel Elliott can do, and he's a possible Heisman front runner this year. What can Virginia Tech bring to the table to stop him? Because I think last year the Buckeyes didn't really get the running game involved, and since Virginia Tech was blitzing so much and they had so much pressure, the Ohio State offensive line looked totally inexperienced, and they were. How are they going to be able to stop him this year with a more experienced line and Ezekiel Elliott, who should be healthy and is the number one guy?
Well, I think it all comes down to the scheme that we saw Bud run against Ohio State. We saw him run it a lot last year. It's called the Bear, and basically the way it works is he basically has 5 down linemen and 1 linebacker, and that way no offensive lineman can double team a defensive lineman. And obviously the Tech defensive front is very, very talented. So basically what that does is it frees up the middle linebacker, who last year was Chase Williams. This year is Andrew Matua-Pawaka, who has shown that he can be a good tackler. It basically frees him up to just go get the running back. And I think that scheme really set them up for success last season. Ohio State really hadn't seen it before that. You don't see that a lot, but Bud Foster runs it just about as well as anyone else in the country. And it's easier to run when you've got those stud corners on the outside, because it really forces teams to want to run the football. And it's hard to run it up against that defense. Luther Maddie will be fully healthy this year. Daddy Nicholas, Kenny Canham on the outside. Corey Marshall up front. Another guy too to watch out for is Vinny Mahota, Seth Dooley. Those guys coming off the bench, they've impressed a lot of people coming off off the bench as the defensive ends, defensive linemen, behind the 2 big guys. So I think that scheme, running 5 down linemen, forcing Ezekiel Elliott or whoever their back is to try and dodge a tackler is the way they did it last year, and I think that's what you're going to see again this season.
So obviously last season, Virginia Tech's defense had a lot of success stopping J.T. Barrett. I think he was 9 of 29, threw a bunch of picks. He looked all out of sorts, couldn't get protections right, but then he developed throughout the season. As a Virginia Tech supporter, I'm assuming, and as one who would like to see Virginia Tech win, is there a quarterback that you'd rather see in this situation? Obviously, Ohio State has been keeping this close to the vest. They haven't let out anything about who's going to be the quarterback. Could be 2, could be 1, but is there one that you prefer? You've seen the success against J.T. Barrett. You have not seen Cardale Jones against that defense. Which one would you rather see?
If I'm a Tech fan, and obviously, I have to be objective, but if I'm a Tech fan, I probably would rather see Cardale Jones. And I think that's only because Cardale has not faced this defense before. JT has. JT's going to have a little bit more experience. He's going to know what to expect a little bit more. I think that Cardale would probably be a little bit more flustered. And I think it would take him a longer time to get used to it. even if you see the film, you really don't adjust to that type of gameplay until you've played against it. And I think that JT Barrett playing against that, it gives him kind of an edge because he's going to know what to expect. He's going to know where the pressures are going to come from. He's going to expect the man coverage on the outside. And I think that if you had to pick one, because they're both really good, I think Tech would be better off going up against Cardale Jones.
I completely agree. If I was a Tech fan, I would think the same way. Obviously, just the speed at which the defense can perform these different tasks, running the bare front and blitzing from all over. So how we normally like to wrap up these shows is by talking about a key matchup and then get a prediction. What do you think is the key matchup? We might have touched on it already, but just nailing it in there.
I think it's Adolphus Washington up front for Ohio State and how he goes up against the Virginia Tech offensive line. If the Virginia Tech interior line can keep Ohio State's defensive line, and Adolphus Washington mainly because he's the best guy they've got right now with Joey Bosa out, I think that Tech is going to have a big upper hand. I'm expecting the offense for Ohio State and the Virginia Tech defense to sort of be a wash. I think that Ohio State's going to get a lot of good plays, but I also think that Virginia Tech is going to keep them from putting up too many points. But I do think that the game's going to come down to when Virginia Tech has the football and Ohio State is on defense, and how much pressure Ohio State can put on Michael Brewer. I mean, I know you guys watched the game last year. Michael Brewer was running for his life. He took hit after hit after hit, and the offensive line has to give him more time. And I think that if Adolphus Washington is able to get into the pocket, force Brewer to flush out either to his right or his left, it's going to make him inaccurate. You're going to get hits on him. Passes are going to be not as good, and the offense is going to start to stall. And I think that really gives Ohio State the upper edge if he's able to have that success. All
right. Do you care to venture a guess at what the score might be and who will be the victor?
Well, I know that the spread is 12, and I think that's way too high. I don't see Ohio State covering the spread. I actually, I wrestled with this for a while, and I started out thinking that Ohio State was going to, handle this one pretty easily. But, I've turned, and I call me biased or whatever, but I'm going to go with Tech in this one. I think that the defensive scheme is too much. I think that scheme really says something. It's really, really hard to beat. You've got to make really good throws as a quarterback. And I just don't think that either Barrett or Cardale Jones are that accurate on the deep ball to go ahead and beat that defense. I'll go Virginia Tech 27, Ohio State 21.
Okay. All right. We always appreciate a little bit of challenging on this program. So definitely, that's great. I mean, a lot of people are talking about how this is going to be a great game between these two, and I can't wait to watch it. Ricky, thank you so much for joining us. We really do.
Thank you.
We really do appreciate it, and best of luck with everything throughout the year.
Thank you. I'll be in the press box for the game here in Blacksburg, so it'll be certainly the biggest game I've ever been able to cover and the most fun to watch. So thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Lane Stadium will be rocking. See you, Ricky.
Oh, it will. Trust me.
All right. Have a good one.
Y'all have a good one.
So that was Ricky LeBleu from the Collegiate Times, the editor-in-chief there. Does a great job, like I mentioned earlier, covering their football team. Honestly, he gave us a 27-21 prediction. I can't see Virginia Tech's offense mustering 27 points. I just don't know that they have the horses to do it. And I think Ohio State's defense is a little bit underrated. They have a lot of talent, even with Joey Bosa not on the field.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not going to pick Virginia Tech in this one, but I do think it's possible that they'd win. I'm not even certain how Virginia Tech was able to score as many as they did last year. I think a lot of that was due to the turnovers, and I don't think since we have a better offensive line and we're more experienced, since Ohio State has a better offensive line and JT's more experienced, that'll happen again. I just don't see that happening again this year.
Right. And talking about our key matchups, if I was to look at one part of this game that is just going to be extremely vital, it's how do Ohio State's receivers match up against the secondary of Virginia Tech? You talk about not having Jalen Marshall, Corey Smith, Dontre Wilson, Braxton Miller is going to have to play an extremely huge role in this game. Bud Foster, what he did a lot last year is he went man-to-man and just said, you guys beat us. Just beat us with your wide receivers, and we're going to pressure your inexperienced quarterback all the time. Obviously, the experience is there with whoever plays, Cardale or JT, but can Braxton Miller make plays? Can some of these younger guys step up? Can Michael Thomas play well against one of the better corners in all of the nation? That will be my key to the game. I think if Ohio State can get a couple plays here and there, that will be just monumental.
Yeah, and just touching on that once more, Kendall Fuller versus Michael Thomas is such an amazing matchup, and not only in just this game, but it has huge NFL draft implications because right now they're both projected first rounders, a cornerback and a wide receiver, and if either one of them just has an absolute beast of a game against each other, their stock will rise dramatically. But my personal key to the game, I think, is the Ohio State offensive line versus the Virginia Tech defensive line, because each unit is incredibly strong in their own right, and I really think that almost everyone on the defensive line of Virginia Tech and the Ohio State offensive line will be drafted to the NFL at some point. I mean, I think that the Ohio State defensive line has to get movement on the Virginia Tech defensive line. I gotta say line so many times. To get Ezekiel Elliott to move, because once, like he touched on, the Bear front is going to be it's going to be one of the more difficult fronts that Ohio State's going to have to run the ball this year.
Can you venture a prediction?
Yeah, I have Ohio State winning. I did not even know the spread was 12, but I have them covering just barely with 13, 27-14. Like you said, I don't see Virginia Tech scoring that much because I just don't think they're going to get as many turnovers as they did last year, and I think Ohio State will score just enough, even without a lot of their offensive playmakers.
I think Ohio State covers the spread as well. Don't be surprised, though, if you're an Ohio State fan and this game is it's a razor-thin margin going into the fourth quarter with either team on top. I think Ohio State gets a couple of scores late because there's only so much you can do to stop all of the playmakers. I have 31-14 Ohio State with the victory. We'll obviously see come Monday. Until next time, for Colin Hassel, I'm Dan Herbener. Go Bucks.